Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. Nelson Cruz drives in half the Rays runs as they win 10-6 in Baltimore. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here. You are there at 11:13 on this Friday night. As always, this Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. So yes, another Rays win. They open a weekend set in Baltimore with a 10-6 victory. It looked like it was a little bit in doubt there for a while. A 3-run home run from Nelson Cruz in the 6th tied the game at 5, and thankfully the Rays were able to get to that O's bullpen. That really was the difference in the game. A bit of a shaky start from Ryan Yarbrough, perhaps, as it seems like he has really been up and down, very inconsistent. Of course, that complete game in Yankee Stadium about a month and a half ago, and he had a nice outing against Cleveland where he went 7 innings, allowing just a run. But tonight, the line for him, 5 runs on 9 hits over 5 innings of work for Ryan Yarbrough, and what ultimately factors into be a no decision. He's got an ERA right now just under 5 at 4.76. So right now, a rotation that's without Tyler Glasnow as he underwent Tommy John surgery earlier this week. Yarbrough and McClanahan really are at the front of this rotation, and those two guys are going to have more pressure on them the remainder of the season. And then, of course, it'll be guys like Patino, Waka, and Fleming picking up the rest of the slack. But it is going to take some good outings for Yarbrough, especially as this bullpen is still trying to rehab from all the injuries that they have. So a lot of balls up in the air right now, but when your offense can put together a showing like they did tonight, putting up double digits against an Orioles team that, I mean, let's be honest, you really should be doing that against. And I was thinking that as well when it was 5-5 heading into the late stages. Just because you score 2 runs over 5 innings against John Means, really no matter what the score is, that does not mean you're out of it. And, with Means getting booted out after the 5th, that means you had 4 innings against a dreadful Orioles bullpen, and you need to score runs against them, especially if you're trailing, and that's exactly what the Rays did. Obviously, they have Nelson Cruz to thank. I'm not sure if without his 5 runs batted in, if this outcome would have been the same, but great for him, great for the team. I know there was some people a little bit low on Nelson Cruz lately. He's got about 2 weeks worth of games under his belt now as a Tampa Bay Ray, and some people low on his performances as of late, but he had his third home run as a Ray, his 22nd overall, so he's just one shy of, I guess, Brandon Lau for really, I guess, the team lead, depending on how you want to look at that. One of the best home run threats, obviously, that they have, and he added a 2 RBI double in the 8th inning, where the Rays in the 8th brought 10 men to the plate and scored 5 runs, putting the game out of reach, taking the lead, and really running away with it. So a lot of good things to discuss. Also a Rays debut for Jordan Luplow. He goes 2 for 4, including leading off the game with a double off the first pitch. So, of course, as always, plenty to discuss. Also, as always, wanting to let you know that you can call the show at 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Getting back into the regular rhythm of things. I know we had a show earlier this week, knocking off the rust. It was one of those games against Seattle, and then we missed the matinee game. So we're back, hopefully trying to get into a normal schedule. I know as I say that, I'm going to miss 2 post-game shows this weekend just because of the way the schedule works out, but really trying to get back in the swing of things. So I appreciate everyone staying with us. I know we had a ton of calls. The phone was ringing off the hook the last time we did this show. What was it? Tuesday night. So wanted to let you know that you can call in. I got all the technical difficulties have been laid to rest, and if you call us, we will be able to put you through and talk Rays. So just wanting to remind you of that. Without further ado, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, dive right into tonight's 10-6 win. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 11:20, we return on the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call is 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official as we continue our coverage of tonight's win. So, without further ado, in 3 hours and 47 minutes and in front of a paid attendance of 11,320, it was the Rays 10-6 over the Baltimore Orioles. The Rays improve to 66-44, tying their season-high watermark of games above 500 at 22, and they are now 31-22 on the road. I believe a top 3 team in baseball as far as record on the road. They are now 9 games above 500 away from Tropicana Field, and you combine that with how good they have been under the dome lately, and you're going to win a lot of ball games. And the Orioles, they are now 38-70, getting their 70th loss, and 17-32 at home. And taking a peek at the division standings, there's a game ongoing right now. The Yankees and Mariners tied at 2 in the 11th in the Bronx, so that'll maybe affect how things shake out. But the Red Sox lose again. This time it was tonight in Toronto and the Rays now have a 2.5 game division lead over said Red Sox. The Boston is now looks like 2-8 in their last 10 games, so they have really been on a skid, especially coming out of the All-Star break. So a team that we were expecting to maybe lose some wind under their sails in the second half, and it seems like that might be coming true. It seems like they are about 10 days away or so from getting Chris Sale added back to the rotation, and he was a big part of their 2018 run. But I would love for my original prediction to be true, and that would be Boston running out of steam and the Rays hopefully running away with the division. And it looks like the Yankees and Blue Jays are going back and forth. The Yankees in third place right now are 6 games back of first, and the Blue Jays, with their win today, are 6.5 games back and forth. So if the Yankees are to lose tonight, I believe the Blue Jays would hop over or at least tie the Yankees for third place. So Boston 2.5 games back, and New York and Toronto not too far behind. But if the Rays keep playing like this, they're not going to worry about what's going on in the rear view, and obviously we hope that will remain the case. For the Rays, the victorious Rays, 10 runs on 14 hits, which is the kind of outings they need to be putting up against Baltimore really each and every game out of those 19 if you can help it. By season's end, maybe they got 14, 15 wins against this team. That would go a long way, certainly. And for the Orioles, it was 6 runs on 15 hits. So they do out-hit the Rays, but don't come close in the run column. And 2 errors charged against them. There could have maybe been more, but just very sloppy play defensively overall for the Orioles. And again, they're not a great team. They're not going to make a lot of great plays. And that was the case tonight. And for a lot of guys, I would say Kevin Kiermaier most glaringly. A team like this, really, if you just put the ball in play, you give yourself a chance to get base runners, and then you string some of those together consecutively in an inning, and all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 runs on the board each and every inning, and that'll give yourself a great chance to win, no matter what your starter on the mound or your bullpen looks like. And I would say that was really the case here tonight. The decisions for the pitchers, it was Drew Rasmussen getting the win, and it looks like that's his first as a Ray, as he is now 1-1 since coming over to the team from Milwaukee in that Willy Adames trade. Tonight he went 2 1/3 innings pitched, giving up just 1 run on 5 hits. He does strike out 1 and walk 1 as well. So 6 base runners over 2 1/3 is not spectacular, and we'll talk about the pitching here after how the lineup did. But a lot of them was just kind of rollers and ground balls finding the holes. More contact than you'd like off a guy that throws 98 and has got a pretty nice slider to back it up. But it seems like that's been the trend lately for Drew. I know he had a nice outing on Sunday Night Baseball. So it's hard to really what to make of him right now. And with his 53 pitches thrown, which is a season high and is probably up there with his career highs, it looks like potentially, I know there's been rumblings, nothing official coming from this, but it looks like maybe, if you're asking me tonight where my hunch is, it looks like Drew Rasmussen may be headed towards joining the starting rotation. That's just my guess. Going into tonight, they hadn't really used him for more than 30, 35 pitches, and they wouldn't even dream bringing him out for a third inning. That would be more of a Colin McHugh type role, which, speaking of McHugh, looks like he may be back as early as tomorrow, but we'll wait and see on that. But for Drew, like Dave Will said on the broadcast tonight, you throw over 50 pitches, you're out for the rest of the weekend. And with how thin this bullpen is, that is not necessarily ideal. But if you throw in the caveat of, well, this is a guy we're trying to bring into our starting rotation to replace a guy, with the likes of Fleming or whoever, maybe even Walker, who knows, or maybe even go into a 6-man rotation. I'm not exactly sure what the thought process is, but I think watching him tonight, and with Tyler Glasnow getting the Tommy John surgery a couple days ago, he does kind of have shades of Tyler Glasnow, a really big fastball that plays up in the zone, upwards of high 90s. I don't know if Drew has touched 100 this year, but a lot of 98, 99s, and a pretty good breaking ball. Had some hard contact early on in his outing tonight, but did get some pretty good swing and miss on it as his outing was finished. So who knows? Again, I could be completely, reaching for this. We'll just have to wait and see. His next outing will be the best indicator. If he throws, 25, 30 pitches, then I guess this would be a blip on the radar. But if he throws, 60, 65 pitches, and I think everyone will kind of know where the thought process is at that point. So that's just something I wanted to bring to everybody's attention because I think it could be something in the cards for the Rays. Who knows? But he does get the win tonight and his first as a Ray. And collecting the loss for the Baltimore Orioles was Paul Fry, who did not record a single out and gives up 3 earned runs in the process. He came in that 8th inning where the Rays brought 10 men to the plate and scored 5 runs on 4 hits. And he was facing the 8, 9, and 1 hitters, and he loaded the bases with nobody out, and they pulled him out at that point. It seemed like a bit of a curious decision, a lefty that's been devastating against left-handers, that they would want him to face both Zunino and Jordan Luplow, who really his claim to fame is supposed to be a guy that crushes left-handed pitching. So Brandon Hyde and company, the brain trust over there in Baltimore, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but you're 38-70 for a reason, and that combined with their defensive play tonight, I thought was a pretty good indicator on where the Orioles currently are. So the starting lineup for Kevin Cash tonight, defense first in the outfield from left to right, making his Rays debut. It was Jordan Luplow in left. In center, it was Kevin Kiermaier, Manny Margot in right, and then in the infield from third to first, it was Yandy at third, Franco at shortstop, Brandon Lau at second base. At first, it was G-Man Choi. Mike Zunino did the catching, and Nelson Cruz was the designated hitter. So, not to bury the lead, I know we're 15, 20 minutes in the program, and this was one of the headlines, at least going into the game. Randy Arozarena was placed on the COVID IL. It looks like he had a close contact with either someone who tested positive or is having symptoms of the coronavirus. So, according to MLB's health and safety protocols, he has to be placed on the IL COVID list. A bit of I guess disagreement. No one really knows what is going to follow. Again, the health and safety protocols that were cited by the likes of MLBTradeRumors.com and various sites that were reporting on this said that he's going to have a minimum of a 10-day stay, no matter if he tests negative or what, a 7-day stay. I believe if you have a positive test, I think it's a 10-day stay, no matter what. But from the Rays, I guess their PR department, what they were putting out, and Kevin Cash in the pregame, it looks like he's going to be listed as day-to-day, and I guess could be activated as early as tomorrow. To me, that would be, I guess, if they found that the close contact, I guess, was erroneous. That, to me, would be the only thing, because who knows if they even have the test result back at this moment in time. But I guess really all you need to know is that Randy Arozarena is not going to be available, it looks like, for some time. I really couldn't imagine him being back, at least in this series. They have, looking ahead for the Rays, they will be in Boston Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then in Minnesota next weekend. So those are the games potentially that he would be missing. If there's any updates that we get, we'll surely pass them along. But since they win, it's not the worst thing in the world. But that was a pretty tough blow, losing Randy Arozarena. Not only has he been an Orioles slayer this year and probably the best hitter on the team against Baltimore this year, but he's also been on a tear. His last 14 games, he is hitting over 400 with 6 home runs, 5 doubles, and a triple in his last 61 trips to the plate. So really for the first time this year was finding that stroke that broke all those records, playoff records during the 2020 postseason. So it's tough to lose him at this time, certainly, because he could launch into another stratosphere this weekend against Baltimore, but it looks like that may not be in the cards, as we said. And replacing him and in the outfield, Jordan Luplow they call up. Luplow was brought over from Cleveland along with DJ Johnson during the trade deadline, where the Rays sent over Double-A pitcher Peyton Battlefield, who the Rays actually acquired from Houston in the trade where they sent Austin Pruitt over to the Astros. So not a big blow to the minor league system by any means, but they had a couple of players that I was not sure how soon they were going to contribute. DJ Johnson was brought in, I think, only a couple of days after the trade because of all the blows to the pitching that we'll talk about later on in the show. And then the outfielder, Jordan Luplow, who, as I said, is a right-handed hitter, and his main claim to fame is crushing left-handed pitching. And looking at his career splits, doesn't necessarily, or this year doesn't bear out. We'll start off with his career splits, I believe, from Baseball Reference, if I have this correctly. In his career, he is batting .195 against right-handers with 9 home runs, 34 driven in, and against left-handed pitching in his career, he is batting .251 with 21 home runs and 50 batted in. So a pretty significant increase on the batting average, about 55, 56 points, righties versus lefties, which is, like I said, pretty significant. And then you look back to this year or even last season, the splits were more minuscule. But I guess what was being cited in 2019, he hit .320 against lefties, and so I guess that kind of set the standard for the kind of player he's being considered as. Has not done a whole lot this year. Pulling up his numbers in 2021, he's batting .173 against, or he's batting .173 overall, and that would be .208 against righties and .140 against lefties. So he's actually been considerably worse against lefties this season. So, like I said, I'm not exactly sure what to make of that, but obviously the Rays identified him as a player that they would like to bring in. They have had considerable struggles against left-handed pitching this season. The Rays have been bottom 5 in most statistical categories: batting average, home runs, runs batted in, average with runners on base, etc., against left-handed pitching. So to bring in a guy that can help in that category makes sense. And with Arozarena on the COVID IL, that opens up the door for him to get some playing time. And looking this season to where he's been in the field, he's played just about 50 games this season. He's played prior to today with Cleveland. He's played 3 games in left field, 22 games in center, and 11 games as in right. So pretty much mainly a center fielder, but has played right occasionally, and very little time in left field. I think funny enough that he ended up being in left field tonight. Just a matter of, I guess, how the Rays do things. It was also reported in his stint in Durham, since coming over in the trade, that he had been practicing over at first base. So looking at various ways that they can get him in the lineup, as before Arozarena was put on the COVID IL, they have a bit of an overload, a surplus in the outfield. I mean, I know it's traditional to carry 5 outfielders usually, but that's a lot of guys really that you want to get playing time. And with Nelson Cruz now being the everyday DH, that it means less playing time for Meadows already. So to somehow find time for Luplow, at least in 2021, as things stand right now, doesn't seem too viable. This to me looks a lot like the move to call up Vidal Brujan when Manuel Margot went on the injury list. Just a guy that they want to give kind of a tryout. They want to see what they have, what he can do against big league competition. I guess that would be more so with Brujan than with Luplow, but when a door is closed, another is opened, as they say, and that is the case for Luplow. And in saying that, I would imagine as soon as Arozarena is activated back off the COVID IL, that it'll be Arozarena up and Luplow being immediately sent back down. What's interesting, and also to note about Luplow, he played about 50 games for Cleveland this year, and then in late May suffered an ankle injury, and he rehabbed it, came back healthy, but he was never activated back to the active roster for Cleveland, and spent time in AAA Columbus for them. So a guy that the Indians, which I think you could argue is the worst lineup in baseball this year, did not see him as the guy that they wanted competing at the big league level. I'm not quite sure what, there's can be ulterior motives, other facts that we don't know that went into that, but I just thought that was worth noting. But and also I think it was low risk and somewhat a high reward because, like I said, they didn't give up much. A Double-A pitcher that they didn't obviously value too incredibly much, and they get back Luplow and also DJ Johnson, who's got a pretty decent fastball that they can add to their bullpen. So a trade that not was made much of at the time, but we're already seeing it bear fruit, and he had a pretty good game tonight, getting now back to the post-game coverage. Luplow, so we gave you the defense, the lineup. Now the way that the lineup was ordered, it was Luplow leading off, followed by Cruz and Franco. Then it went Diaz, Lau, Margot, and at the bottom it was Choi, Zanino, and Kiermaier. So I thought interesting, righty on lefty for Luplow right out of the gate against the lefty John Means, putting that platoon split to the test right off the bat, and it didn't take long. Like I said, first pitch double, which was Luplow's 7th of the year, and I think he's also got 7 home runs to his name this season in just 50 games played. So the power numbers have not been too bad for him, but just the batting average has very much struggled. After a 2 for 4 tonight, he's got his average up to just 186. So we'll see if he can go on a hot streak here with his new team. That would be a pretty cool thing to see, no doubt. And then I guess pretty traditional lineup against a left-hander. You want Cruz at the top, and then also Wander Franco. When we left in early July, that was the last time we were doing everyday shows. Franco was, obviously still within his first month, his first 3 or 4 weeks in the big league play, and it didn't matter against righties or lefties. They would bat him second or third every day. That has since changed as Franco has got somewhere along the lines of 50 games or so under his belt now, and they found out more about him, and he's so far this year been considerably better against lefties than he has against righties. So against lefties, he's continued to bat second or third, and against righties, we've seen him in the order as low as the 6 or 7 spot. So he bats third against the lefty today and was a key contributor, going 2 for 5, and he's now got his average on the season up to 250. So he has really been on a nice little tear as of late, and he has now reached base safely in 10 consecutive games. And then you look towards the bottom, Lau batting lower in the lineup, in the 5th spot, lefty on lefty. That's to be expected. Choi, that was as great as the offense was tonight. Choi stuck out like a sore thumb in the 7th spot, going 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts, and he had some really, really dreadful looking at bats against John Means, and that would be a good indicator of a starting pitcher having a good outing when you can embarrass G-Man Choi in multiple at bats, 2 or 3 of them in fact. So he was about the only guy not joining in on the party, and of everyone in the starting lineup, it was only Lau and Choi that did not collect a hit, and they both go 0 for 5. So both lefties in the lineup as well, which that's exactly why they've been struggling against left-handed pitching, because it seems like some of their key lefties, whether it be Lau, Choi, Meadows, whoever, tend to struggle lefty on lefty, and so that's been something that's continued to plague them. I'm not going to go down 1 through 9, just because, it was against some not so good pitching, but everyone had great nights. But just reiterating again, Luplow, a great night, adding a couple of hits, and then obviously Nelson Cruz, we'll talk about him, and obviously MVP of the game, no doubt. I'm not sure that we even would have won the game if not for him. 2 for 6 with 5 runs batted in. He's got his average now up to 282. It was a 3-run homer in the 6th that tied the game at 5 also. Down 5-2 in the 5th, or rather in the 6th, it seemed like things were maybe getting away from the Rays, because Yarbrough had a not such a great start, and Rasmussen had given up a run as well. So you're finding yourself down a considerable amount of runs, and then thankfully they were able to get runners on the corners, which at the time, that was the 3rd time in the game that they had done that. They had runners at the corners in the 1st, in the 3rd, and they did it again in the 5th. So that was actually the fourth time in the game they had runners at the corners, and the first 3 times no runs had come from it. So as Andy Freed said on the broadcast, can the fourth time be the charm? And it wasn't just a blue pit to score a run. It was a massive blast from Nelson Cruz. It went 395 feet to left center, and the 3-run homer tied the game. So that was a huge point in the game, and to be able to tie it at that particular moment as well was huge because it was set up. That was against an Orioles reliever, but you knew that the rest of the way, obviously, you were going to continue to face that dreadful bullpen, and so that you could tie it, get yourself back in it. You knew you could set your bullpen up a little bit better, and you wouldn't just be, having to throw B or C bullpen guys out there in a moment where you're trailing. So that was huge. And then he did it again as the Rays were able to load the bases with nobody out in the 8th, and it was Nelson Cruz with a liner just down the third base line, and Nelson Cruz didn't even leave the batter's box at first. He didn't think it was going to be a hit. It looked like, and it probably should have been caught by the third baseman Michael Franco, and instead it kind of bounces off the very edge of his glove there and rolls into left field. And Nelson Cruz, who's 41 years old, if he gets to second base, he got a lot of that baseball, and especially with him being slow out of the box on that particular play, it was pretty well struck. I think it was only 82 miles an hour off the bat or something like that, but like I said, a Nelson Cruz double is legit. It's not like a trying to think of it. It's not like a Kevin Kiermaier hustle double or anything like that. I mean, it's a legit well-struck ball. So those were his 4th and 5th runs batted in of the night, and like I said, was huge. Wander Franco with a couple of hits, and one of them was against the lefty Means, and another one looks like it was against the right-hander Dylan Tate. So does get one from each side of the plate, and I guess it's worth talking about Wander Franco now. I've been obviously trying to work him in because I've got some stuff for him, and this was from Matt Germain on Twitter, I think, before the Sunday night game. From July 22nd on, so that was after his first month in the big leagues because he was made his debut on June 22nd. So from July 22nd on, his 43 plate appearances that followed July 22nd, Franco has hit 350 with an on-base of 395, and he is slugging 500. He's got a 7% walk rate, 14% strikeout rate, and his 7.9% swing strike rate is second lowest on the team in that span, I guess only to Yandy Diaz, which was 7.4. So a lot of the stuff that we heard about him in the minor league system all those years were bearing out to be true, that he's got a really well-built strike zone, does work a good amount of walks, and just that he's a terrific hitter, can hit to all fields, and is a really good hitter. I think will ultimately be from both sides of the plate. There was also some talk about him struggling at home because early on, and even still, but not as drastic, his home road splits were going the way of Willie Adames. And Adames, a guy, if you didn't catch it, he had an interview on the Chris Rose rotation a few weeks ago, and he admitted, obviously after he got traded to Milwaukee so he could speak more freely, but he admitted that the lights in the trop, he said he could not see the baseball and that he was basically guessing on some of the swings, which would explain why he looked so miserable working at bats at home when he was with the Rays. So with Franco's early struggles at the Trop, I think some of that concern was resurfacing itself for Franco, but I think that has been put to waste or laid to waste. In his last homestand, Franco batted .321 with a .393 on base and a slugging of .500. So was terrific on that homestand, and it seems like as well he is a Red Sox killer, which I think is a really good sign. Because I think for years to come, a good portion of Franco's career, the Red Sox are going to be one of those teams, along with the Yankees, that the Rays are going to be competing year in and year out for the division. So if that's just going to be him, he's just going to be a guy that absolutely murders the Red Sox. I'm definitely going to be okay with that. So far in Franco's career, and he's got 32 games under his belt. I don't know why I said 50 earlier. I think I was getting confused with Luplo, but in 20 games at home, he's batting 189 with a 282 on base and a slugging of 311 with a home run, 2 doubles, 2 triples. And then on the road this year in 12 games, he's batting 321. So 321 versus 189, I mean, that's still a But like I said, looked like we just had some technical difficulties there. The Wi-Fi cut out, so I'll just pick up where I left off. And if I missed a bunch, then I apologize. But like we said, for Wander Franco, his home road splits, batting 189 at home, 321 on the road, so about 150 point difference between the two. But he is just coming off a homestand where he was hitting, 320 for the homestand. So. That's good to see. And then also checking in on his platoon splits, righty versus lefty. He has got 84 plate appearances from the left side, where he's hitting 205 with a 262 on base, no home runs. And then from the right side, he has got 49 plate appearances with a 306 average, a 364 on base, a 592 slugging, all 3 of his home runs. 3 doubles, 3 of his 4 doubles, and 1 of his 3 triples from the right side as well. So basically 100-point difference better from the right side than from the left side. But lately has been much, much better from the left side. So I think he's still trying to make up for that dreadful start that he did have from the left side. But I think it is going to come back around. And I think we'll end up being a guy that can hit high 200s, like a guy that can be 280 potentially from both sides of the plate. That would be absolutely terrific, and hopefully a guy that can hit maybe 15 or so home runs from both sides as well. And he's still working at some kinks defensively. He had a play where he made a nice backhanded grab, but then instead of just setting his feet and throwing the ball, it took a while to get the ball out of his hand, and it was the catcher running. It was that one out single, I want to say, in the 6th, that he was able to reach base on a base hit because of maybe a misplay. It wasn't called an error. But I don't know about you, but I've found myself so far since Franco's getting called up, and he's, like I said, played just over 30 games with the big league club, where there's been a play on defense that goes to the shortstop position that's maybe not made, and it's not a play that you can expect Franco to make, but I find myself going, I feel pretty confident that Willy Adames would have made that play, and Franco did not. I think some of that is just Franco working out the kinks, because again, he's just 20 years old, which is rare for a guy to be playing in the big leagues every day at that age. And also, we were saying the same things about Adames when he first got called up. Danny Hechavarria would have been making some of those plays. So I know, especially at the Trop, it's going to take an adjustment period, and just wanted to reiterate some good thoughts about Wander Franco, because I think even potentially as early as this postseason, he's going to be an impact player, and really could be a difference maker. If he's doing really well, then it could be a big reason why they're having success, and maybe if he comes up short, that could be a reason why the Rays could fall short as well. So I think already has put himself in a position that he's one of the cornerstones of this franchise, and I think that's just exactly how they saw things would shake out when they were able to acquire him when he was just 16 years old. Hard to believe he's been a part of this system for so long. And also, Manuel Margot had a big night at the plate. He goes 3 for 4, adding a walk as well. And as we said on Tuesday, it seems like there's no lingering effects of that hamstring issue that put him on the injured list prior to the All-Star break. At the time of the injury, it could have easily been day-to-day, and he just sat out a couple days, it looked like. But they make the conservative decision to put him on the IL and including basically the week off during the All-Star break, really just to probably give him some rest, because 20 on the season with 2 outs. He's a terrific strike hitter. He's probably the best hitter with runners in scoring position that we have on the team. So if there's a guy that you want to make sure is healthy, especially going into October, Manuel Margot would probably be at the top of that list. So I think a good sign that he has shown, no sign of slowing down, even with that fairly lengthy, 2.5 week stint on the injured list. I think he joined the team when they came off the break in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Zunino with a couple of hits as well. He goes 2 for 4. And the last guy offensively that I wanted to talk about was Kevin Kiermaier. He goes 2 for 3 with 2 walks. And starting the game off, it was a couple of infield singles. One of them, it was just a ground ball right down the first base line, but it was just kind of a slow roller. And he was hustling up the line, and he was able to run out a single. And with a runner at third base, it also brought a run home. That was Manuel Margot. And that at that point in the second, that gave the Rays a 2-1 lead. So that was big. And then later, he had an infield hit in the fourth. And Kiermaier, a guy that is at the top of the team as far as strikeouts and swinging strikes and all that stuff. But I thought tonight was a perfect example of if you can just put the ball in play, especially against a team like Baltimore, and they'll be playing the Twins next week, and teams like that aren't very good, don't play very good defensively. When you run up the line as fast as Kiermaier does, all you got to do, man, just put the ball in play, and you're going to be legging out some singles. I don't know why he always swings for the fences. I think that's always going to be an issue for KK, just because he's has never changed his approach really since he's been with us for, 7 or 8 years. So, but tonight was a perfect example, and he was also working his walks as well. 2 infield hits and 2 walks. An interesting night for Kiermaier, no doubt. And then the 9th spot, that was providing some value, turning back over to the top for Luke Lowe and Cruz and Franco, who all had pretty good nights. When your 1, 2, 3 hitters each get 2 hits apiece, and with what Nelson Cruz is able to do, you're going to have a lot of success offensively. And then you combine that with the bottom of your order, both Zunino, Kiermaier, your 8 and 9 men getting 2 hits apiece, you are going to put a ton of runs on the board. And that's exactly what they did. The lineup as a whole struck out 10 times, which just seems like a formality at this point that they do that each and every time. They were able to work 5 walks, and as we said earlier, 14 hits, which is a lot of hits, obviously, and that they're able to get 10 runs off of that is nice. Just about every hit coming across the score. They go 5 for 15 tonight with runners in scoring position, which may not sound as good with just the numbers, but you do the math, and that's 333. And the stat that's been floating around, I know Bally Sports Sun has got it on the ticker seemingly every day, that the Rays hit 280 with runners in scoring position in their 66 wins, and they bat, I think, just 160 with runners in scoring position in their 44 losses. So about 120 point difference with runners at second or third base, and that's one of the biggest markers for any team having success, but I think for the Rays especially, it seems like whenever they lose, it's always a bad outing and at the plate where they can't drive men in a clutch situation. So they do that not early in the game. As I said, they left 3 separate times runners at the corners, and they end up getting no runs out of those, but the 4th time was indeed the charm with that Nelson Cruz home run, and I think easily you would say his best game as a Ray to date, but he's been with the team just a couple of weeks. Now, moving on to the pitching side, it was Ryan Yarbrough getting the start tonight. It was Yarbrough goes 5 innings, allowing 5 runs on 9 hits, does not walk anybody, which was good, 4 strikeouts, and does allow a couple of home runs. Of his 9 hits, 6 were for extra bases, 3 doubles, a triple, and 2 home runs. So not only were they making a lot of contact, but it was also a lot of hard contact. 97 pitches, 64 were for strikes. Was not good in establishing the first pitch strike, 13 of 23 in that regard. So starting off, a lot of hitters 1-0, and when you don't have a good chase pitch, especially the first time through the order, he was certainly paying for that. And he gave up runs in 4 of his 5 innings. He had a 1-2-3 inning against the bottom of the order in the 4th, but the rest, he was getting dinged out for at least a run. It was a run in the 1st, 2 in the 2nd, 1 in the 3rd, and 1 in the 5th for his outing tonight. I noticed he did not introduce a single curveball until his second time through the order, and that was a situation to Cedric Mullins where there was a runner at second and 2 outs, and he just threw Mullins like 3 or 4 curveballs, and Mullins ended up striking out on that pitch in that at-bat. So Baltimore, I think a team that seems like they always have a pretty good game plan against them, against Yarbrough rather. In 3 starts against the Orioles this season, Yarbrough has thrown 17 2/3 innings of work. Over that span, he gave up 11 runs. So going into tonight, he was averaging 3.5 runs allowed per game and a 5.5 ERA against Baltimore this year, and he had given up about 6 1/3 hits, 6.33 hits per start against Baltimore, and probably did even worse than that tonight. But that just goes to show you how good they've been. So with Zunino behind the plate, he always seems to craft up some pretty good game plans for his starting pitchers. Thought that was interesting that they chose not to introduce the curveball until the second time through. But then after that, I mean, they were using it a bunch, and he had gotten about halfway through the lineup a third time through, and he was using the curveball throughout that stretch. One of the most glaring times this season where I've noticed a very small differentiation between the cutter and the changeup. It seemed like the cutter was about 81, 82, but at times was about 80, and his changeup was like 78, 79. So you're talking about only at times a 2 or 3 mile an hour separation between those two pitches, and that's something we hear a lot when a guy develops a new pitch like Glasnow's slider, that it had to have differentiation between his curveball to really be considered a separate pitch. And when it was going, it definitely was much different from the curveball in terms of speed. But when you don't have that differentiation, it leads to a lot more contact because even though it's different pitches and you have different grips and maybe it moves a little bit different, I mean, just to be throwing about 78 to 82 miles an hour almost every pitch. And the first time through the order, it was every pitch, 78 to 82. And he had a bad night as far as placement. It seemed like he was catching way too much of the plate way too many times, and that's where those 6 extra base hits came from, including those 2 home runs that he allowed. So that was a concern. As far as like pure stuff, it was one of his worst nights of the year so far. I thought the curveball was good, but again, he didn't introduce it until the last out of the second inning. And at that point, he had already given up 3 runs. So he gave up 2 the rest of the way for obviously that total of 5. So not quite sure what to say. Was not working inside to right-handers as much as he should have. It was just away. And hitters that know how to face him are going to have success against that and just go the other way a bunch with it. Mancini, who is a Ryan Yarbrough killer, had 2 doubles against him, so surprise. And then other guys who have seen him a bunch. Haynes had a home run, Mullins a single, and Mountcastle a single as well. So like I said, pals who are familiar and I've seen him a bunch, we're doing some damage off of him. So I'm not quite sure where you move from here. I mean, when he was starting with the team in 2018, his cutter was like 88, 89. At times tonight, it was all the way down to 80 or 81. So there was obviously a conscious decision that went into changing that velocity, but at times like this, I wonder if it really was for the best. But who knows? At this point, looking at the way the schedule works out, it looks like his next start is going to be Thursday afternoon in Boston against the Red Sox. So Yarbrough, who finally had a half-decent start against Boston his last time around, is going to have to face them again. But it looks like maybe Boston could be on the downturn, so it could be potentially a good time to face him. So that was our starting pitcher tonight, Drew Rasmussen, who we already talked a bunch about, 2 1/3 innings, Gave up a run on 5 hits, 1 walk, so 6 base runners over 2 1/3. 53 pitches, a season high, 34 of which were for strikes. Did a great job with first pitch strikes. 9 of the 13 batters he faced, he started off 0-1 against. So that was a good sign, and that's really all I have to say. More contact than you'd like, but the fastball was at 97, 98. It was up in the zone. The slider, a lot of hard contact early. There was a pitch to Santander to start off the 6th, which was the first batter he faced, and I thought Santander was going to take him out of the yard, and a tie game that would have given the O's the lead. So maybe things could have gone differently, but thankfully the park held it, and he had another fly out that went out to the warning track in that inning. But then after that, didn't have. Well, he actually did have a couple of fly balls, but not too many that were too bad. So it seems like Drew Rasmussen is either untouchable or he's more contact than he'd like. There is really no middle ground, and he gave up a base runner in every inning that he faced. Couldn't get a clean inning of work, whether it was a walk plaguing him or a base hit. Just kind of a lot of rollers and ground balls finding the holes. But maybe it's not too important. Maybe with the 53 pitches, that's not the concern, and they just want him to get stretched out. So we will definitely keep our eyes on that. And then Andrew Kittredge came in the 8th with a couple of men on to try and get out of a jam. It was runners at the corners with 1 out, and he gets out of it through just 7 pitches, so he'll obviously be available tomorrow and Sunday. And then Lewis Head closed it out in the 9th with a 4-run lead. It's an unsafe situation. Did allow a hit, so it wasn't a 1-2-3. The Rays only put the O's down in order once, and it was in the 4th inning. So the O's got at least 1 base runner the other 8 innings, which is never a good sign. But Lewis Head shutting the door. Fastball was good. Slider was good. 11 pitches, 8 strikes. He's got a 1.35 ERA. That is a fantastic sign as well. So the Rays now matching their season high water mark, 22 games above 500. They are now 2.5 game lead in first place over the Red Sox, who have been dreadful as of late, and it was the Yankees winning in 11 innings over the Mariners. So it looks like the Yankees are going to gain some ground on them in the wild card chase, but also in the division standings, they are now just looks like 5.5 games back of first, and they are in third place. And they're only 3 games back now of the Boston Red Sox. So their next meeting, I believe, which is in the Bronx, I will be there on that Tuesday game, or Tuesday games rather. It's a day-night doubleheader for my first time in Yankee Stadium. So we won't be doing the show during that time, obviously, but I could very may well be seeing the Yankees overtake the Red Sox for second place. And then you're worried about a whole nother animal, because the Yankees now are 7-1 following the trade deadline, which is the best of any team during that span. They have won their last 4 in a row, and obviously acquiring Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo to add to an already murderer's row of a lineup. They traded for Andrew Heaney to add to the rotation. I know they're missing some guys right now on the COVID list. Jordan Montgomery, Garrett Cole, and Gary Sanchez are on the COVID IL for them right now. So if they get those guys back, and who knows, man? Like I said, if Boston's on the downturn, the Yankees get hot. Those teams could trade places. They're only 3 games apart in the standings after tonight. So that's it for tonight's game. Looking ahead to tomorrow's contest, it is listed as a 7:05 start. I've heard there's going to be some pregame ceremonies that could push it as late to a 7:20 first pitch. But it'll be game 2 of the weekend, 3-game set. It'll be the lefty Shane McClanahan against the righty Spencer Watkins. We'll start with the Rays side first. Shane McClanahan, the 24-year-old left-hander, is 5-4 on the season with a .374 earned run average. This is his second start this year against the Orioles. His last time against Baltimore was on July 20th at the Trop. Gave up just 1 run on 4 hits over 5 innings of work, walked a man, struck out 7, 93 pitches, and obviously one of his better starts. And his last time out overall on Sunday Night Baseball was a very impressive start. 1 run on 4 hits over 6 innings, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, so a familiar stat line there as well. There were just 88 pitches in 6 innings, so it was very efficient there as well. If not for the score, very well could have gone 7, but I understand obviously why they did not do that. McClanahan, a Baltimore area native, he grew up going to games at Camden Yards. He expressed some excitement to pitch there, so I think that'll be cool for him to be able to finally pitch in the place where he grew up going to big league ball games. I can only imagine how exciting that is, and just based on how he did against the Orioles his last time out, I think he's due for a pretty good start, and the bullpen could certainly use it the way things are going right now. And speaking of the bullpen, I mean, just about everyone other than Rasmussen is available. Colin McHugh could be activated as early as before tomorrow's game, so he could be in the bullpen potentially. But they've got Kittredge, Sheriff, Whistler, Lewis Head could easily go into back-to-back, and then they've also got 2 righties in DJ Johnson and JT Chargois, and the lefty Dietrich Enns, who has yet to make his debut. So they've got, obviously that long list of guys. No one that you feel super comfortable with going in the game, but they've been pitching well lately. You can't really complain. And then going up against McClanahan tomorrow, it will be the 28-year-old right-hander Spencer Watkins. On the season, he is 2-2 with a .381 earned run average. His last time out was a pretty good start against the Detroit Tigers. He gave up 4 runs on 3 hits over 5 2/3 innings of work, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 89 total pitches thrown. Easily his best start of the year, and it has remained true since. It was on July 19th at the Trop against the Rays. He allowed just 1 run on 4 hits over 6 innings of work, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, 92 pitches. And then looking at his scouting report, he's got a fastball at low 90s, about 90, 91. He's got a curveball that sits about 77 to 80, and a mid-80s pitch that's a cutter. But the Dave and Andy had a different name for it that night. They called it the Invisiball, only because it was taken for a strike almost every time he threw it. So hopefully they see that pitch a little bit better this time around, maybe with the backdrop of the Baltimore night rather than those fluorescent LED lights up Tropicana Field. But he could be poised for another good start, who knows. But I think like tonight, he could have a start like John Means, where he gives up 2 runs over 5 innings. And that's, even if you're losing, that still leaves you with 4 innings against potentially the worst bullpen in baseball. So, a good chance for them to add on another win and get a series win. So far this season, the Rays are 9-1 against the Baltimore Orioles. So they're looking to add on to their domination in this season series. They have still got 9 games left this season against Baltimore, so a chance to add on more wins to their win total, which is now at 66. So hopefully it looks like they're on pace. I mean, if they finish the season, 22 games over 500, that's going to put them at 92-70, which you would hope would be good enough to win the division, but they could end up with more wins even than that. Who knows? So we are not going to be on the air tomorrow night after the game, and I don't think we're going to be. Well, I'll tell you this: I can't make any guarantees, but I'll try. Sunday night, maybe at about 10 or 11 o'clock, we'll go on and discuss the 2 weekend games. And make sure to stay tuned at WHBC Official on Twitter to find out about that and get the link to the show whenever it goes live. If we're not on the air Sunday night, the Rays are off Monday, and as we will be too. But starting Tuesday night, the Rays will be in Fenway Park against the Boston Red Sox for a 3-game set, which will be very crucial. I think even if the Red Sox are still on the low, turning on the downturn, I should say, the Rays could really have a chance to maybe not deliver a knockout punch, but something close to the sort. And I know we would all be pleased to see that. So some big games on the docket. And then also, just because I've teased it so many times, I'm going to do it. We have just some of the stuff to catch up on, the trade deadline, but also the pitching injuries. I want to talk about the pitching first. Right now, The Rays have a team record 15 pitchers on the injured list, 12 of which are relievers. Of the 15 pitchers, 11 have arm issues. 8 of the 11 were injured from spring training and on, so only about 3 of those are some long-term stuff going into this year. So all that talk of, the 60-game season going into 162, what effect is that going to have on pitchers who are having to kind of readjust back off of the short sprint of a season? And you look at the notable injuries right now. Ryan Thompson on June 27th went on the injured list with shoulder inflammation. He was transferred to the 60-day IL earlier this week to make room, I believe, for Dietrich Enns, I want to say, when they were adding more pitchers. And he will reach the 60-day term on August 27th. That would be the first day that he would be eligible to come back off the IL, but it does not look like things have been very promising, so it could be sometime in September or maybe sometime in the playoffs, who knows. But a guy that's been great, especially coming in jams with men on base, inherited base runners, all that stuff. And since, late June, they have sorely been missing him. On July 20th, JP Fireeisen went on the IL with shoulder discomfort. And an update on him, he is close to throwing off the mound and may have already done so since I wrote that down. We haven't gotten an update since, but probably getting close. And then I don't know exactly for sure. Depends on if there's a rehab assignment, but looks like once he throws off a mound, he could be about a week away. Who knows? So sometime in mid to late August, we could be getting Fireeisen back. On July 21st, Colin McHugh went on the 10-day IL with what was called arm fatigue, and it looks like he's set, or he already threw a live BP earlier this week, and that was, I believe, on Wednesday. And he could return to the team sometime this weekend in Baltimore, again, as early as tomorrow. Could be Sunday as well, who knows. And if not Sunday, you would think definitely by Tuesday in Boston, he would be activated from the IL. And with it being arm fatigue, I can't imagine that it's too big a deal. I know a lot of people worried just because of how good McHugh has been. I think he's pitched to an ERA under 0.5. Since going on the IL initially this season in May with what was called back discomfort. So, back discomfort, arm fatigue, not real injuries. It just seems like maybe some wear and tear on his body. He did not pitch in 2020, so a big jump from him from not pitching at all to suddenly be thrusted into a pretty big role in the Rays bullpen as their kind of go-to guy for, 3 innings or so in a length outing. So it looks like he'll be back soon. On July 28th, Pete Fairbanks went on the IL with shoulder inflammation. That's the second time that he's been on the IL for the same reason, which is never a good sign. But it seems like everything is encouraging, or at least that's what the Rays brass is relaying. We haven't gotten any update on that other than that. I guess he may be throwing sometime soon, but I think it's still shut down. Jeffrey Springs on August 1st went on the IL with a right knee sprain. That was, after that Sunday night game where he was fielding, I want to say, a bunt or just a ground ball and trying to, I guess, go over to third base, or it was on the third base side, and just planted on his knee wrong. Some people were thinking maybe it's a torn ACL. I don't know, but they called it a right knee sprain. He's going to be shut down for 10 to 14 days, but does expect to pitch again sometime in 2021. Which would expect you to, or would lead you to believe that it's not something like a torn ACL, which would, probably put you out until sometime mid next season. But it looks like he could be pitching sometime this season, and a big reverse split guy from the left side. So has been probably, I would say, a B bullpen guy so far this season. But that's a long list of guys: Thompson, Fireeisen, McHugh, Fairbanks, and Springs. That's a lot of guys that they've got missing, but they could be coming back. And then guys that they have season ending on the IL, Chaz Rowe, who underwent shoulder surgery, Tyler Glasnow, who underwent Tommy John on Wednesday, Cody Reed, who underwent thoracic outlet syndrome surgery, and he's going to miss the rest of the year. And then Colin Poche, Yanni Chirinos, and Jalen Beeks, all recipients of Tommy John surgery prior to the start of this season, but they're just missing 2021 as part of the rehab. So Those are just 3 of the guys on the 15 list. And other guys that could be returning soon but have been longer-term IL guys. Obviously, the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Anderson with a partially torn elbow ligament. He went on the injured list pretty early on in spring training. I know you all remember kind of his kind of falling apart at the end of the playoffs last year, especially in the World Series in Game 6, coming in after Blake Snell and ended up kind of blowing the game there. And he was great early in the playoffs, but he was obviously used too much and has not been the same since and did not look good in spring training. The velocity was way down, and it ended up being a partially torn elbow ligament, but no Tommy John surgery was required, thankfully. His AAA Durham rehab assignment was sidelined due to a COVID issue, so I don't know if he's going to have to miss the 10 days or what. I mean, that's going to push it back. And then you think maybe he spends a week, 2 weeks in Durham. It depends. So I would put us, probably late August. And then if the Rays are really conservative with him and the Rays are winning a lot of ball games, they can maybe wait until September to bring him back. But that would have him for the stretch run in a pretty crucial month of September as far as who they're playing in the schedule. And then leading into October in the postseason. But it looks like everything is good, at least so far. So the hope is the AAA rehab assignment will go successfully here shortly when he can get off the COVID IL. Chris Archer went on the IL on April 10th for forearm tightness. That was after his first start and his second appearance of the year at home against the Yankees. I was there. He looked great for about 2 innings and then came out of the game. And it was a long road back for him. Because his mother had passed during his stint on the IL, and he took some time away from his rehab to tend for his family, which clearly you understand. If you're familiar with him as a Rays fan, you know how much his mother means to him and his family. So you can only imagine the kind of stress that put on him while trying to come back from an injury like that. But it looks like right now he's a couple of rehab starts away. He was scheduled for a 5-inning, 75-pitch rehab start, but it was thwarted by some left hip soreness. So hopefully that doesn't put him out for too long. And it looks, his next time on the mound would probably be that 5-inning, 75-pitch start. And then by then you're thinking he's maybe only another start or 2 away at Durham from coming back to the big league level. So I put him in with Nick Anderson. Could be back sometime early September. Get him for the stretch run and into the playoffs. I think Chris Archer, a guy that not anyone's really talking about, not going to be an ace, but could be very good, maybe number 2 or number 3 starter if he's pitched. We haven't really seen him at all in 2021, but if he pitches anything like he was his last time in a Rays uniform, that could be a good sign. He had thoracic outlet syndrome surgery, I think it was before the 2020 season. And very few pitchers have come back from that successfully. I don't think long term he's going to be able to really stave it off. I think the forearm issue is already kind of dooming him, and hopefully he'll be able to overcome it at least this year. Part of the reason why the Rays only signed up for a 1-year deal for $6.5 million. Now, that's a lot of money, but I think the Rays understand he may not be have much left in the tank after this season. We're just going to have to wait and see. He may not even be available this season, but the hope is, like I said, that he'll be maybe back for September in the stretch run. And then Oliver Drake, who went on the injured list, it was October 20th of last year with a strained flexor, which is something in his elbow. A guy that was really good out of the bullpen last year and has not been available since the playoffs last season. And we haven't really gotten a ton of updates on him, but the hope is he'll be back sometime this season. And right now, I mean, you would take anyone you can get in the bullpen. Only Kittredge, Sheriff, Waka, and Yarbrough, current pitchers on the roster today, were on the opening day roster, so a lot of arms changing hands, if you will. And of the 8 relievers on the roster currently, only Ryan Sheriff was on the 40-man when spring training opened, which is just absolutely absurd to think about. Right now, the starting rotation, without the likes of Glasnow, and they traded away Rich Hill. Right now, Ryan Yarbrough as kind of the ace, McClanahan as the 2, and then you've got Michael Wacha, Luis Patino, and Josh Fleming, all guys that you never feel too confident in, but Fleming has been good and Patino been improving, but I think they all have their ceilings and their limits. Just taking a peek at Rich Hill, who they traded at the deadline. So far, he's made 3 starts with the Mets since moving over to the Big Apple. All 3 of his starts, he's gone 5 innings. His first start against the Blue Jays, he gave up 3 runs. He gave up 4 against the Reds, and he pitched 5 innings, giving up just a run. His last time out, that was yesterday in Miami. So has not been tremendous for the Mets, but has not been terrible either. I think we've all been kind of expecting a downturn for him as a 41-year-old pitcher pitching, I guess, close to a career high in innings, or getting up there. That's going to take some wear and tear on your body, but he's still pitching to an ERA under 4 and a 6-4 record, so he's definitely been servable this season. And that's in respect to the rest of the rotation, what they could have had, but I don't blame them because they did get a decent return out of it. And then the way the bullpen sits right now, you've got Kittredge is kind of your guy that's first out of the pen. Rasmussen, who's for length, who pitched tonight. You've got only 2 lefties, Ryan Sheriff and Dietrich Enns, who's yet to make his Rays debut and has not pitched in the big league since 2017. He's only made 2 career big league appearances, so kind of a rare comeback story if he does end up making it. He may never pitch for the Rays, who knows at this rate. And then kind of your one-inning righties, and Matt Whistler, Lewis Head, DJ Johnson, and JT Chargois, who they got in return for Diego Castillo. And that transitions us now to the trade deadline. The Rays did make a handful of moves, the most notable of which obviously was the move that they made about a week or so before the deadline even occurred, and that was in acquiring Nelson Cruz from the Twins. They had Calvin Foucher, who is a pitcher, a minor league pitcher as well. So, and I don't think much is made of him. So basically, Nelson Cruz they get in return. They send over 2 decent starting pitching prospects, Drew Strotman, who I believe was just kind of a relatively low ceiling guy, but has been decent at Durham this year, and Joe Ryan, who I believe performed on Team USA in the Olympic Games this year, and as a guy that throws a lot of fastballs, but it's a really good pitch, and because I remember seeing him in spring training and reading some about him, so they do deal away one of their prime starting pitching prospects. Obviously, Shane Baz is at the top of that list, but Joe Ryan is not a bad guy in their own right. So it makes sense for the Twins, who are maybe looking at a rebuild. They want some starting pitching depth at the minor league level, and in exchange, they give the Rays a guy, Nelson Cruz, a 41-year-old DH who got half a season left on his contract. So not a bad move, I think, for either side. And Nelson Cruz, a guy that the Rays have been trying to acquire since, the 2019 season, so they finally get him in a Rays uniform. The other move that we just talked about, Rich Hill to the Mets. In exchange, they get right-hander Tommy Hunter, who probably will not even play this season with an injury. I don't think they have any interest in really having him on the active roster. Eric Neander said the only reason why he was included in the deal was to even out the money owed, so that the money, basically the money that the Rays were pawning off on the Mets with the Rich Hill contract, they got back with Tommy Hunter, and but they also required a prospect, a AA catcher, and Matt Dyer, so adding some minor league depth for half a season of a 41-year-old starting pitcher who has not really pitched more than 5 innings in any start. Yeah, I mean, he had one really good start for the Rays, but that was about it. That was against the Royals, where he went 8 innings and struck out 13, but that'll be the best game he had as a Ray. Then another move they made was with the Mariners. They sent Diego Castillo over to Seattle in exchange for JT Chargois, who is another reliever. And I think in some regard, just kind of a one-for-one as far as both of those players' abilities. But I know Diego Castillo, in about a week with Seattle, has already blown 2 saves, and fans are already kind of hating him, and he has not looked too good. There was a report from some Seattle news outlet that the Rays were unhappy with his conditioning and his offseason stuff, and that he was overweight, and the Rays were unhappy with it. Kevin Cash denied the reports. To me, that's got all over it something that the Rays just lie about, because you don't want to tell the truth about something like that you would pawn off a player that you're not high on. So I understand why they do what they do, but I'm sure that news outlet was correct in its source, because why else would the Rays be trading him at a deadline where they're supposed to be buying and not selling? But JT Chargois has not been bad. I don't think he's a tremendous reliever, but neither has Diego Castillo been for the last couple of years. I think we need to put to rest the Castillo of 2018, where he was throwing almost 100 on crazy sinkers. I mean, has not thrown harder than 95, 96 this season, and has been struggling with control. Kind of like Jose Alvarado, a guy that was once very good but has since fallen off, and you got to trade him while he still has some value. And in return, along with Chargois, they get a Double-A third base prospect in Austin Shenton, who's already hitting over 300 with Double-A Montgomery. So not only do they get kind of a one-for-one, but you get a prospect in that as well. So the Rays playing for the present and also the future. A very well executed deadline, if you ask me. And that trade with the Indians that they made, they sent over Double-A right-hander Peyton Battenfield, who they acquired from Houston in that Austin Pruitt trade a couple years back. And in return, they get outfielder Jordan Luplow, who played tonight, 2 for 4 with a double, and then right-hander DJ Johnson, who's just kind of a one-inning reliever. It's been fine, decent mid-90s fastball, and it's got a breaking ball off that. So far this season, DJ Johnson 1-2 with a 4.76 ERA, and then Jordan Luplow, not much playing time in 2020, but in 2019 he played 85 games with a 2.76 average. That included a 3.20 average against left-handed pitching. So that was the deadline. I think it was a bit misconstrued. I think how fans took it, because the day of the deadline, the Dodgers got Scherzer and Trey Turner, and the Red Sox got Schwarber, the Yankees got Gallo and Rizzo and all that stuff. The Giants got Chris Bryant, who the Rays were apparently in the running with. Scherzer, who they, I think, wanted to get, but Scherzer said he wouldn't waive his no trade. Well, he didn't say it, but it was reported that he would not waive his no trade to go to the Rays, so there's nothing Tampa Bay can do about that. So they tried to make deals, but they weren't going to overpay like some of these teams did. I mean, the Blue Jays gave up 2 really good prospects for Jose Barrios, and I mean, I know a guy who's works in the clubhouse of the minor league team, I want to say they're single or Double-A New Hampshire for the Blue Jays, and he saw those minor leaguers play, and he said that they were the best players that they had on that team, and so that the Blue Jays gave both of those up for a season and a half of Jose Barrios. So that's just to put in perspective the kind of moves teams are making. It really is desperation, and that's not how the Rays operate. So I understand the feeling of Rays fans sitting at home on deadline day and watching all the teams make the moves, and the Rays not. The Giants get Chris Bryant. The Rays get Jordan Luplow and DJ Johnson. I know it feels a little bit like Charlie Brown getting a rock at every house on Halloween, but it's really, I don't think, like that. You also get Nelson Cruz, which I think the story is getting a little bit overplayed, but it's really been set as kind of a franchise-changing move, and a guy that it's kind of their Moby Dick. It's the whale they've been hunting for years, and they finally got him in Tampa Bay, and that he's a veteran and garners respect, especially from all the young players who grew up watching him, and that he's a veteran hitter and all those things. So even the hitting coach, Chad Mottola, has said he can't understate what he's done, and that he's basically just another coach, but in uniform and with a bat. And sometimes the players are more likely to listen to a guy like him than they are to their own hitting coach. So that Nelson Cruz can just relay maybe the same messages, but that the players pick it up a little bit better. And then it's not just that, but that the 5 RBIs tonight, the tying home run, and the 2 RBI go-ahead double that he added in his next at bat. So making an impact in multiple ways, and I don't think the Rays had to give up too much to get him. Joe Ryan could end up being good, but if the Rays go on another run this playoffs and Nelson Cruz be a big part of that, I mean, anything short of Joe Ryan being Nolan Ryan, and I think you'd be okay. So put it that way. So with that being said, we're gonna put a wrap on the show. I thought it was a really good show. Felt good. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. Certainly, as always, no calls tonight. I was a little just disappointed only in the fact that we had so many people calling last time, and of course, with my luck, the phone line would not go through. So I guess that's just what I deserve for the technical difficulties. But thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll try and be back Sunday, but if not, we'll be back Tuesday after the game against the Red Sox. Make sure to follow us at WHBC Official on Twitter for all updates on the show. You get the show when it goes live, all that good stuff. So make sure, stay tuned on that. And as always, we'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.